Good afternoon. My name is Renee Payton, and I'm the Director of Business Development for BizXL Solutions. We're just going to give everybody about one more minute to finish joining. I see a couple people that are in the process of joining, and then we'll begin the conversation. All right. Well, we've got quite the turnout today. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Renee Payton. I'm the Director of Business Development for BizXL Solutions. Thank you all for joining today, and welcome to the conversation. We've received questions from some of you in advance, and we'll start out with those and answer those first. For those of you that perhaps might want to submit a question either now or at some point during the conversation, please feel free to do that under the questions tab, and go ahead and submit your question. As we begin the conversation, I'm going to share just a little bit with you briefly about BizXL Solutions. We at BizXL work with business leaders across a spectrum of industry verticals. Our leadership team brings global experience working with some of the largest and best run corporations. At this time of unprecedented change and great uncertainty, we thought creating this panel discussion to help answer pressing questions that you as business leaders are facing today would be useful. We're looking forward to a good conversation and hope you can take something back to your organization to plan a sustainable business operation post-COVID-19. So as we begin, I'm going to start out by introducing Chander Sharma, the founder and managing partner of BizXL Solutions. Chander drives both operational and strategic improvements for his clients to transform their businesses into revenue drivers and leaders in their industry. With more than 24 years of experience supporting businesses across Canada, US, India, UK, and Australia for Fortune 500 companies in banking, financial services, business process outsourcing, automobiles, and consumer goods. He is passionate about designing human-centered products and services that entice and engage customers to build brand loyalty, drive conversation, and increase market share. In partnering with C-level executives and their teams in organizations of all sizes in the following industries: manufacturing, financial services, and healthcare. BizXL Solutions helps develop practical and pragmatic solutions to business problems. We help clients benefit from using his skills in integrating lean thinking, design thinking, Six Sigma analytics, agile development, and change management into company strategy to maximize value creation and solve complex business challenges. Also joining today is Amit. Right, Amit is a former Amit is a former CFO and COO and business leader with 22 years of progressive finance and business leadership roles in USA, India, and Asia. In his 15 years with GE in a global and regional roles, he's served multiple businesses, including healthcare, energy and industrial systems, financial services, and corporate, where he was awarded several management awards over the years for continued outstanding performance. Amit was also a co-founder and partner in a venture capital investment vehicle. More recently, Amit has built a successful operating partner business working closely with venture fund startups and other early stage businesses across healthcare professional services, marketing technology, and digital content sectors. He's a mentor and advisor to several early stage companies. Amit holds a CPA degree from the Colorado Board in the US. He's a national merit holder, chartered accountant, and qualified cost management accountant from India. He's also completed executive learning programs at Harvard Business School. Amit is a graduate of GE's Experienced Financial Leadership Program and a certified Master Black Belt in Lean Six Sigma Quality Methodology. Right. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you Chandra Sharma and Amit Rastogi. And I'm going to start with questions to Amit. Hold on just a second here. I'm going to pull up the first question.
Thank you, Renee, for that warm introduction.
You're welcome. So the first question that was submitted here for you, Amit, is what's the funding climate like right now for businesses, both established and particularly startups or small businesses, and how should one deal with it?
Yeah, great question. Very timely too. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in. I hope everyone is staying safe and making the best of these challenging times and taking advantage of the opportunities these times have thrown at us. So the funding climate is, each business is different, each situation is different, but there are some generalizations or aggregations that we can make. On the banking side, there is a lot of liquidity. Fed is doing quite a bit. 4 or 5 days back, they changed another set of rules, made the PPP and the money market mutual funds, changed the rules around counting them in liquidity calculations, making more money available for the banks. There's literally trillions of dollars at play there now. The challenge, however, is when you look for debt, is banks are increasingly averse to the loose lending that existed earlier. So your credit worthiness is topmost priority right now for them. And the credit quality is something that everybody from top to bottom, not just risk, is right now watching. I mean, many businesses are expected to struggle during this time, and therefore there is more and more reason for the risk management in the banks to become stronger. So if your business is good and strong cash flows, and they're not necessarily affected too much by COVID, you're in a delivery business, you're in a technology business, you're in a streaming business, these businesses have only seen benefit coming out of everybody going remote. So the banks are very happy to lend to right now. But there are certain sectors that are obviously in deeper trouble, and for those, getting money right now out of banks may be difficult. For some smaller businesses, there is government funding. I mean, there's, everybody's familiar with the news headlines out there on how the PPP program of the government is going, at least in the US. In Canada here, things are slightly different. So, the jury's still out in that one. The VC activity for early stage businesses, that's pretty much crashed. And the numbers that came out end of March said a 20% decline. And that's when March was pretty much, at least half of March was normal. So with 2.5 months of normal activity and only 15 days of decline, we already saw funding activity going down by 20% in terms of number of deals. The valuations, the lofty valuations that the startups and the venture capital world has gotten used to, they're down anywhere from 20% to 50% or even more. So all the ESOPs, all the people issuing ESOPs, all trying to hire big talent using ESOPs, they have to rethink the whole environment. For private equity, this is still a great time. There's a lot of good businesses available at a discount now, and private equity is moving very, very rapidly. While most people are sitting at home, the equity guys are working overtime, looking at deals, finding ways to buy businesses on the cheap. And you guys are, everybody's sort of looking at the stock market right now and how the March 20th kind of valley was there, and now it's come back quite a bit since then. So that remains an attractive option, but nobody's kind of rushing to run to the stock exchanges to issue IPOs. So in terms of the funding availability, each business has to evaluate on their own, and more often than not, they need external help to do that. So talk to the banker, see what you hear, and then if your business is eligible for venture funding or seed or angel funding, go talk to people. But I think the general climate right now is finding new money is tough. If you already have a funding source, such as a prior venture capital investment, they are much easier to convince to do a follow-on round because they would love for you to survive. But in general, finding new money, going to bank for new lines is difficult. The only other thing I'll mention is that there is a bit of an information overload as well. So there's too much information coming out, and people are not able to process. I mean, yesterday, Wall Street Journal, for example, introduced, at least to me, what was new was a swoosh-shaped recovery. And as I think about what a word like that could possibly mean, and I looked at the shape of the recovery that they very kindly plotted. I mean, there's just so much new information coming out that it's impossible to keep track on your own. And therefore, I strongly suggest that if you're in the market for money and you are struggling, look for external help. Back to you, Renee.
Thank you, Amit. That's a very, very good question and a good response. Our next question, actually, Amit, I'm going to direct to you as well. What are the most important things for business managers to consider right now?
This may sound like I'm preaching, but to me, this is for any business manager trying to solve this for themselves or their businesses. These are very trying times. There's multiple stress points, pressure points, and so on. But in my punch list, the number one and the most important is assessment. So assessment. Continuously got to see which way your business is headed. And within that assessment category, I'd argue the number one thing to think about is survival. Is your business or industry, your product in a place that survival is difficult? If you're in a travel support business right now, you might fall in that category. If you're in a luxury goods distribution, discretionary spending in the upper mid-market kind of segment, you might be in for a little bit of a struggle, and so on. I mean, some luxury products are doing very well, private jets, for example. People who don't want to fly commercial are upgrading to private jets, keeping safe. So there's some luxury goods that are doing well, but most luxury goods will struggle during this time. If your product is a value product, cleaning supplies or small products that are very suitable for consumption, they may still be okay. The second piece of assessment is the KYC. So we talk about KYC in a more papers and formality sense, but for me, KYC is like really knowing your customer. Who is your customer? What's the persona? If you're in a B2C business, you've got to build personas of your customers and really know what's happening to them. If you're in a B2B business, you got to look at your top 20, top 30 customers and really deeply understand what's happening in their business. If you're not able to help them, chances are you might lose them. So keeping very close tab on what's happening in your customer's business is sort of fundamental to what's happening in yours. With an assessment, then I move on to know your employee. So KYE. You got to know how your teams are doing, what's their health and safety concern, what's driving them. In this environment, very few people are switching jobs at the same time. If employees see you standing with them at this time, there is a good chance that once the crisis is over, they're going to stick with you. The other thing to think about is risks. Right now, data security breaches, litigation risks. If somebody falls ill or has an adverse experience while they're working in your business or somehow interacting with your business, that may expose you. So while everybody's keen on survival, keeping an eye on the legal side, considering how litigious the general way of the world is right now, it is important. Operations and supply chain, things that if you're in a manufacturing business and you have supply chain links to China or other parts of the world where right now traffic movement, cargo movement is affected, you got to think about, are there parts of it that you can now diversify? The second thing, so after assessment, the second thing I want to focus on is cash flows, both short and long term. I mean, right now, literally cash is king. So any leakage that you might have in your cash cycle, you've got to be very, very careful about. You may have done the work in a services business, but may not be able to bill. You may be able to bill, but you may not be able to collect. You may have a purchase order, but you may not get go ahead to deliver the services. So there's too many points on which you may lose access to cash, and then all your projections that you had made and you had assigned cost to will suffer. There's literally a long list of things that you've got to think about as a business leader right now. But I think the top in my mind is a very close assessment of what's happening in your business, focus on cash, focus on technology. Typically this is the time when you're overloaded with stuff to do. We should look out for people who can help us think through technology. We've got to variabilize the cost, we've got to automate cost lines, and things like that. So I think that those, and the last item on this list for me is particularly, if you can do something to support your local communities, do that. It is certainly good for you and the business, good karma points, but also it's free PR. So sometimes when you're trying to build a brand in the local community, going out in front and helping other people is seen very positively both by employees and customers. So this is literally, like I said, good karma points and good PR if you're out there supporting people, and it certainly feels good as well to be able to do something for people. Renee?
Oh, thank you, Amit. Our next question I'm going to direct to Chander. Chander, what are the top 3 things to keep in mind as we plan to get back post COVID-19?
Thank you, Renee, for the question. It's a very important question that everybody is kind of thinking about. But first of all, good afternoon, all of you, for taking your time to participate in this conversation. The 3 things. So COVID-19 is something which has never happened in the past. So there is nothing for us to look back and rely on. So this is the first time something like this has happened, and it is called as a black swan event, which is something which is unprecedented, which has never happened. So there is nothing in the rear view mirror that we can look at. So it is a new kind of operating model that organizations will need to create. The first step for organizations would be to create a crisis assessment and management team. And that team, the structure needs to be which is cross-functional in nature, not just one function, but cross-functional in nature. And from the governance standpoint, this cross-functional management team should have a direct oversight of the senior leaders of the organization, wherein accelerated decision-making can happen. So once that is done, you have the team in place, the team will need to quickly understand 2 aspects of the business, which are very important. The first one is they have to look at, what is the operational elements, or what are the operational elements, operational assessment. The second part is the financial assessment. So I'll skip the financial assessment part because Amit has elaborated on the financial assessment part. On the operational assessment side, there are few things which need to be evaluated quickly so that your operations, your business can get back in action. The first one would be the organizational management. So the way the organization is structured, the way the people work in the current state to create and deliver value to the customers, is it the right way, or is there an opportunity to redesign that element so that keeping safety in mind of have and the customers and the community, services can be delivered. The second part which comes is, and there have been many organizations which have already leveraged that process infrastructure. So they have redesigned processes, workflows using technology, which has enabled their employees to work remotely. There are many large financial institutions who have 80-85% of their workforce working remotely, and they're able to deliver on the customer needs of all types. So that's the second part. There are different elements. Even in manufacturing organizations, there was a news that Tesla has opened their operation, although there was some conflict with the government there in California. But they have a very detailed playbook that they have created, which defines, which has visualized all the scenarios which can go wrong, and they have a response action plan defined, for all those things. The third aspect, which is important and which can become a differentiator, even a post-COVID time environment, is your technology enablement, which in my mind, some of these organizations, if you look at Shopify from Canada, is one of the organizations which has become number one in terms of market capitalization. It has gone past Royal Bank, which is the largest financial institution. Um, and this is a digital play. So organizations like Microsoft, Zoom, and some of the other organizations in this space are bringing capabilities which organizations can leverage, and they have been leveraging to create an operating model where their employees can work in a fragmented environment, from their work remotely, and create and deliver value to the customers. These would be the three key things, Renee, for all organizations to consider. First, assess properly, create, which is when you assess, they look at operational assessment and financial assessment. And in terms of other elements, they have to look at organizational management, process infrastructure, and technology enablement.
Thank you, Chander. You touched on this a little bit, but I'm gonna bounce a question back to you that came in just about a minute or two ago, that you started to touch on a little bit, and I think maybe you can expand a little bit based off of this question. And that is, what will be the new business model post COVID-19?
Sure. Yeah, so one thing is very clear: the things are changing, and the experiments which organizations are doing in today's context, uh, some of these changes are here to stay. They're not going to go back. So I'll give you an example. So there was a senior leader of an organization I was having a conversation with. They moved about 90% of their workforce um, remotely. They used some Microsoft capability, the remote work desktop and capabilities, and they are experiencing about 20% lift in productivity. So one, people are working remotely. They are happy because they are saving on the commute time. Some of them have challenges because they have children at home, they have their pets, they have some elderly parents, who have to be taken care of. But those are the challenges. But overall, people save on commute time. They are in a comfortable environment, and they are happy there. So my sense is this change in the operating model is going to stay post COVID-19, and many of these people would not be willing to come back. If you look at what is the impact of such changes, if large organizations, large corporates are able to have their employees work remotely, and once post COVID, they'll have to give them an option that some of the employees might be still willing to come back to work, but some of the employees might prefer and will be able to deliver a better productivity working remotely. So the technology, the security, the data management, access management, all those capabilities have to be brought together into the operating model so that people can work that way. The second thing which impacts in the operating model is all the organizations will need to think about their commercial real estate. Today, if organizations have expensive prime commercial real estate, they might start thinking about how they want to repurpose them or downsize their possession of these things, and the cash that they can free up could be used to create enhanced value for them. So that's again a big opportunity in terms of the different operating models. The third thing, which I would say in terms of the different operating model, is this is crisis is also an opportunity for innovation. When there is a crisis, that's the time when a cross-functional team from the organization can really think of designing and delivering value in a different way to the customers. And the whole ecosystem can be redefined and redesigned. So this is an opportunity because the cash is low. As Amit said, you cannot go out and raise too much of capital. The sources are limited. The government is trying to support in many ways, but still that opportunity of getting additional cash is low. So the best way for organizations would be to look internally and understand the ecosystem in which they're playing and how can they restructure themselves to design and deliver enhanced value. So these are all challenging times. So organizations will need, as they come together, they improve collaboration within the different silos of the organization, which at times were happy functioning in silos. But in today's world, that collaboration with these work from home tools and the technology which is available is going to unleash that value. So Renee, a long answer to the question, but I think the operating model redesign is going to be specific to each organization, each industry, and how they're able to leverage the capabilities of their existing functional domain experts to create that new operating model.
Thank you, Chander. So often, even leading up to this, we saw workplace of the future, and now we're really seeing what workplace of the future is starting to look like. Now, I want to remind everybody that if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them under the questions tab. I've seen some come in, and we had some come in prior to the meeting. Our next question is Amit. It's going to go to you. And it is, how should businesses prepare for a prolonged COVID-driven business disruption?
So I think Chandra's kind of touched upon a lot of these themes already. I mean, to me, the punch list is make technology your best friend. There's conversational AI out there. There's transformation in operations, supply chains, that very often when we think about technology and we think about it's disruptive, it's behavioral change, it's adoption risk, all of these. And now what COVID has done is it has thrown all of these at us already pre-assembled. So we already have a disruption, we already have behavior change. All the prior processes are already broken down. So this is a great time for us to think about how technology can, what our business process needs to look like and how technology can really, really accelerate the transformation. And there again, most businesses today, unfortunately, are not equipped. They do not have internal teams who think and live and breathe this stuff. And therefore, I always encourage businesses to seek help and not necessarily to try and solve everything on their own. Because opportunities, I mean, while COVID is a challenge, COVID is also a very large opportunity for many, many businesses. The other thing to do to prepare yourself is to variabilize your cost. So as much as possible, make your cost variable and linked to revenue. Simple examples are, structure a large portion of employee cost as incentives, turn fixed rent into revenue share arrangements, find more franchisees for your business. I mean, there's lots of ideas, but as hard as it may seem in normal circumstances, the disruption that COVID has caused and has caused people to rethink, their priorities or their restrictions or their constraints, is also a time for the businesses to think about how to link, how to reduce some of that operating leverage. In the past, when the sales are growing, having a good operating leverage is very helpful, but then it comes back and bites you at a time like this. So this is the time to think about variabilizing cost, at least in the short-term future. The other piece is to constantly assess, similar to what Chandra had spoken about. I think there is lots of opportunity there. And again, sometimes we look at the news and we tend to paint a very dismal picture of what's happening, but many parts of the economy are already seeing green shoots. I mean, the traffic volume is up, the sentiment is up slightly at least. And I'm talking the last 3-4 days data almost. So it's changing so rapidly that even if you made an assessment of your business 20 days ago, it may no longer be valid. And any data that you looked at 20 days ago or 2 months ago or 3 months ago, there is a very, very high likelihood that that data is no longer valid. So you have to reassess and assess constantly. And the last thing I'd say is, don't shy away from looking for new leads and new business. Again, sometimes our mental makeup is such that we believe that this is the time for despair, this is the time only for cost outs, this is the time to save every penny. But this is also a time where new needs have come up, prior supply chains have broken. So this might be a time to also investigate if you can get some new leads, you can capitalize on customer behavior change. Can you be one of those businesses that move from some part making into ventilator making and are suddenly flooded with hundreds of millions of dollars of orders? So I mean, with each crisis there are opportunities, and I think that notion of keeping a balanced view while you deal with everyday stuff. This is an opportunity for you to cut your hair at home, for example. And I know I've done it. So it's a month ago, 2 months ago, you could not convince me to do that, but now I'm happily doing it. So it's each one of these crises may throw both personal and professional opportunities, and one must keep an open mind and a balanced mind to deal with them.
Thank you, Amit.
Renee?
Yes, yeah. It's amazing the things that we're now willing to do on our own. So the next question I have here is for Chander. It says, we're a financial services organization. Our teams are working to keep employees safe and deliver customers' needs during the COVID-19 crisis. We're thinly spread. How can we innovate and create a more resilient operating model?
Thanks, Renee. Great question. I think this must be a challenge that many organizations must be facing. So even when lockdown restrictions begin to ease, I don't think businesses will be able to go back completely to their current way of doing things. The businesses will need to figure out how to operate in new ways. And in the current state, efficiency has been a very important aspect. But I think what organizations have realized that they have to also factor in resiliency, the ability to absorb a shock and to come out of that shock better than the competition. Now, this is a challenging time, but every time we have seen when there is a recession, there is a dip in the economy, there is some kind of a difficult situation. The organizations that survive that, and they are able to create a different value proposition, are able to come out of it stronger. So for a financial organization, they must be thinking about the value to the customer. So there are a few things that they can definitely consider. One, to maintain a normal operation, stabilize that, and second, to innovate. The first part is, for stabilization is they have to look at, how to educate customers on the implications of post lockdown. So on a continuous basis, they have to look at, keeping a close communication, close engagement with their employees as they redesign, redefine the products, the tools that they offer to the customers, and how the employees are enabled to do those. Innovation at this time is something which is difficult, but that's where the challenge comes. When there is stress, there is pressure. That is the time when the teams, the cross-functional teams, are able to think out of the box, because the normal way of doing business is not going to work anymore. That is what is going to push them to create something different. And this in this environment, early organizations were saying that 2-year, 3-year digital transformation roadmap they were living with, and today that luxury is not there. Many organizations we have been talking with, they have been able to get most of the workforce to work remotely in 2 to 3 weeks. So what was planned for years has been pushed and has been accomplished successfully within weeks. So innovation is complex, but at this time, if your teams are given an opportunity to collaborate cross-functionally and explore different ways of you know uh, delivering products and services, it can create a lot of value for the organization. And that is what will lead to innovation. One other aspect of innovation is this is the time when the agile way of working will be very relevant, because as Amit mentioned, uh, if you were looking at creating a solution for your organization 20 days back, it might not be relevant today, because the information flow is changing so rapidly. The assumptions that we are baking in our operating model are changing. The scenarios that we have planned and we are evaluating are changing so rapidly that this is going to be difficult for any organization to create something and stick with it. So experimentation, pivoting, learning, and doing something, and learning from it and pivoting is going to be the key. And as your organizations are able to give employees some kind of a flexibility to experiment, and learn and pivot, it will definitely lead to innovation and greater enhanced value for your organization. So that's the key. So how can you innovate? The same team which is doing crisis management, a cross-functional team in your organization, can be given a task of innovation, and they can have some people can be leading it, but the success will only happen if they have the freedom and the flexibility to explore, design things, experiment, test, and learn and pivot. So that's the organizational focus. If the organization from the top to the bottom is aligned, that crisis is there, we have to manage the crisis, but at the same time, we have to become more resilient for the future. And then the organization starts to allocate some resources to it, then it is going to definitely be very successful effort. Thanks, Renee. Back to you.
Thank you, Chander. Our next question has come in for both of you. I'm going to read it in just a minute, but I want to remind everybody that if you have questions, please feel free to put it in the under the question tab. Click on it and submit your question. We should have time for 2 or 3 more questions after this. So our next question is again for both of you. Are enterprises going to invest in business process automation, especially when supply chain and manufacturing are going to be brought into the country? Will automation be the new placeholder for outsourcing and cost-saving initiatives? What is your view?
I can start, Renee. So it's a great question. So at this time, if you see people who are into manufacturing, they have realized that there is a lot of disruption which is happening because of the supply chain being distributed globally. It has been so far the focus has been on efficiency. So wherever we can get something done the cheapest, and that's what is going to be the mandate. But now in the new environment, automation is going to play a critical role, because what manufacturers are realizing that close to shore, or close to where their operation is, in their sphere of influence, if something is there, it will have reduced variability, and their operation overall is going to have higher resilience. So if we look at that model, and we had a white paper that we presented on insourcing not about 6 months back, and we spoke about both these manufacturing and services. Both sectors stand to gain with technology. So if today, and one other big aspect, the lead time to market a new product for manufacturing organizations can drastically be reduced if the product development and design team is kind of co-located or closer to the operation. So then it can be even more efficient, because product design team has a view to the constraints and the realities of the manufacturing, the capabilities of the manufacturing setup. So this is definitely going to happen, in my view. It is going to make operations more resilient, and also, the way the relationships, the global relationships are happening between US, China, and other countries. This is going to definitely be a big change, which many manufacturing organizations and the leaders are already thinking about. And as we see some lockdown relaxation happening, some announcements would be coming on these issues. Great question.
Great.
The only thing
Amit?
I'll add, Chandra, thanks, Chandra. I think the only thing I'll add is, in general, yes, there is a certain bias towards automation. I would agree with that completely. There is a need for that more and more. But I would encourage businesses to take a long, harder look where they stand. To buy a robotics machine today could cost several $100,000. There was an article the other day. If you want to change the bulbs in a single Walmart store, so that they are automatically spraying the ultraviolet light, and you don't have to sanitize the store every day, the cost of that is $100,000, versus having somebody do this, for an hour every day. So each business needs to assess where they stand and what part of their work they can automate. Outsourcing by itself is not bad, is not out of fashion now, but the assessment of where you stand, what your current capabilities are, what part of it you can automate, one has to see. And there again, I encourage, if you're internally not staffed or not skilled to do that, is to look for expertise in that area. Very often we miss these opportunities because we read the headline and don't know the detail, and sometimes that comes back and hurts us. So automation, yes, that is the direction. That is absolutely the way to go. But how fast you get there and what mix of automation and outsourcing and staffing you use may change for your business, and therefore knowing that answer is important.
Thank you both. I have one more question. So if anybody else has any questions, please go ahead and submit. Our next question is for Chander, and it ties in a bit with just this last question. How can manufacturing organizations with dependencies on global supply chain prepare for post-COVID-19 time?
Yeah, so this question is kind of tied to what I just said. I think efficiency has been a primary focus of manufacturing operations, whether they have focused on just-in-time concepts, lean operations, or Six Sigma to reduce variability. But the COVID-19 has shaken the manufacturing leaders, and they have realized that they cannot just have just-in-time operations. They have to look at the inventory that they carry, and it has to be a little more than what is just in time, to ensure that these kind of shocks, when they come, their operation is not completely sabotaged based on a particular occurrence of a crisis. So that's where fundamental change in the thought process is going to happen. And as more and more manufacturing leaders, start to reassess after the post-COVID scenario, they will start assessing, how can they make their operation more resilient. And some of the variabilities which have been there in terms of the location of different ancillaries or the components they're coming from, where they have the operation, how they structure the operation, what kind of inventory they keep in, how do they manage operation, what kind of workflows they have. So all those things are going to be reviewed and relooked at, so that with the focus on resilience, which has not been that strongly looked into in the past. Right? Back to you.
Yes, thank you, Chander. I was just reading a question that just came in. It doesn't say who it's directed to, so I'll let you guys choose. Is transparent global communication relevant more than ever?
I can start there. Yes, it is. It is very relevant. I don't know if it's it's hard to say if it's more than ever or less than ever, but it's knowing what's going on, staying in touch. I mean, right now, like I said, there is an information overload. So picking the right sound bites, staying connected with, not just global, but your local chambers of commerce, your local bankers, your local vendors and customers, staying connected with them, communicating very closely with your employees, with local government agencies. I mean, there's the general notion is we're in a lockdown, in a hibernation, in shutdown mode, but this is your time to be very active, network heavily, learn a lot. I mean, this is not just a time to sit back and kind of wait for things to open up. So communication and the need for it remains very, very relevant, very important, and one has to take a leadership role in doing that.
Thanks, Amit. I'll just add to it. Yeah, so transparency is extremely important at this time, because this is not a small or a localized issue that we are encountering. It's a pandemic. It is something of a very large global magnitude in terms of impact. So if we move to a microcosm of an organization, within that organization, we are looking at customers, clients. We are looking at employees. We are looking at the government bodies, and with all and other stakeholders. There are communities of which you are a part of as an organization. So it is extremely important to understand the needs of all the different stakeholders. Earlier it used to be said that the purpose of a business is to maximize shareholder value. But last year around the round table, the business leaders agreed that it is not just the shareholders, but all the community members. So this time, to understand and communicate with the different stakeholders is a critical aspect to come out successfully from this current scenario. So whether it is your customers, you have to educate them with how you're going to deliver products. If it is a store, are you going to say, we are going to deliver products on the curbside. We have created a new operation. So if you are available for business and with a different set of rules, you have to understand and be transparent in communicating to both your employees, your communities, your customers, and understanding, and also having an active dialogue with the government bodies. So that and I think the critical part, these chambers of commerce are playing a very active role. So it's important to be closely knit with them as well, so that you can not just communicate transparently what you have to say for your business and stakeholders, but also understand what is happening, what other organizations are doing, and if there are any best practices that your business can benefit from, do that as well. Thanks, Renee.
I think we have time for one last question. If anybody has any last questions that they would like to submit, I'll give everyone just a moment to do that briefly. And then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts from both Chander and Amit. again, just giving everyone one last moment to submit any last question that they might have, and see if anything comes through. We actually just had somebody join a little late recently. No? All right. Any last thoughts to wrap up and end the conversation, Chander, Amit?
Yeah, Renee, I think
from my standpoint, sorry, go ahead, Chandra.
Go ahead, Amit. That's fine.
Okay, thanks. No, so from my standpoint, I think this has been a very interesting time to sit back and reflect a lot more. I mean, in our usual busy schedules, there's literally no time for reflection. There's always one fire or the other burning. I think this is the time a lot of the businesses should really sit back, think through, re-energize themselves, prioritize the main to-dos. There are certain trends that are very secular, very clear. The move towards automation, the move towards technology, taking care of people. But these themes have come again and again and are more important, taking care of your own health and well-being. So these themes are resonating more than ever. They're very clear trends, but this is also a time for business to reflect on the business model, the products and services mix that they have, the supply chains, and I would strongly encourage everyone to look at them deeply, hard, and use whatever external help they need to be able to get there.
Thanks, Amit. Yes, so this is a very different time than ever. I mean, in my lifespan, this is the first time I've experienced something like this. Everybody has been complaining that we don't have time to spend, with our family members, and here we are stuck with our family members, and I've heard the other side. People are saying that it's too much. We need to have the lockdown get done. This is on the lighter side, but on the serious note, it's time to look at different ways of doing business. So first step for any organization, any business is to how can we keep our business relevant, first of all. The second thing which is important is how can we maintain our employees who are healthy and well. The third thing is how can we use this opportunity to differentiate our offering to the customers so that when we are on the other side of COVID-19, we have emerged stronger from this. So even if our business volumes are lower, we can either explore creating a new operating model or creating some different capability for our customers wherein they see enhanced value. And that as we move to the other end of the spectrum, we are able to come out more stronger and improve our competitive edge in the marketplace. So it's a great opportunity. It's for everyone to kind of reflect and reassess, realign, and redesign our businesses. And also, I would say it's an opportunity to reassess, realign, and redesign our lives. We normally don't get this much time to reflect and spend with our family and think back. So it's an interesting time. Hope everybody is safe and well, and we are able to together come on the other side of this pandemic together successfully. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Back to you, Renee.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining and thank everyone who submitted questions today, both before and during the discussion. If you think of any questions that you'd like to have a conversation with us about, you should be able to see on the screen our contact information and reach out to one of our offices or even to me directly, and we can continue the conversation. I wish all of you well, and that you all stay safe and healthy, and wish you the best. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Renee.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.